Okay, we're live.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Finance Committee meeting. Daryl will be presenting the university budget for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021. So without further ado, I suppose we will turn it over to Daryl.
There's not much ado when I'm associated with it. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate everyone's time to come to the Finance Committee meeting. We'd like to begin by saying hello to those that are not in the room. Hello, Debbie, General Mason. Hello, sir. And to welcome our newest board member, our student governor, Hannah Berry. So welcome, Hannah. I want to talk about several things in the Finance Committee today, and I'll ask Corey and them if they would to put the slide presentation up on the screen. Corey and Tom. And they have told me 1 minute per slide, so I think there's 150 slides. So.
Okay. We'll be here a while.
I used to not be this lengthy until I started working with my current. And I've gotten more lengthy in my explanations and things.
Glad that I could help.
Thank you, President. This is a Finance Committee report. We'll begin with a financial update on our revised budget for the current year that will be ending in a few short days, the 30th of this month. Just want to give you an update. There's not a lot of changes that we have made for this current year from the last budget report that we gave at the April meeting. We've received another cut from the state of Missouri concerning our state appropriations that exceeds a little over $1 million. By the same token, we at that time we're still in discussions with the Missouri Western State University Foundation about some additional funding. And so we have included in this budget $1.2 million of additional reimbursements for things that were expended on the campus that there are endowment earnings for that they are reimbursing us for. So that's included in this budget. So those are the major changes in the budget. Here you will see that we have made, that will be the fourth change to a budget that we have made this year. As we have gone through this, the total original budget, the revision 1, which we came to you with as of 9/30 of 19, which was in the October board meeting, then the revision 2, revision 3 in April, and then our current revised there. And so what you see during that period of time is an additional reflection of funds of $3.2 million in operating revenues that have been added in. At the same time, we have over right at $5 million of additional expenses. Which brings us down to a current revised budget currently standing at 2.4. People have asked me numerous times, including the president, where do I think we will wind up this year? This is my best guess right now. We've got some year-end things that we'll handle. We've got some additional funding that we're expecting from the foundation, but we do think that it will be in the $2 million range as we close this year from operating funds. Okay, and that's a big hurdle in my mind from where we were, because as you'll recall, we started, once we got what I would consider a more accurate, detailed budget together in late September, we were $3.1 million. Since that time, we've lost $2 million plus in state funding. And so we had a decline in enrollment. So we've had all the COVID issues and things. So to still make up ground during that time, I think is a good in my estimation. So I'd like to take that moment to pat myself on the back and my fellow administrators under President Wilson's leadership. But
Good job, everyone.
but it's been difficult, quite honestly. It's been very difficult.
Daryl,
Yes.
if it weren't for the COVID, we may have had a balanced.
Well, we would have gotten closer. I would not say that we would have balanced because we had some unexpected expenses arise. If you recall the boiler and
Yes.
the units that we had to replace mid-year, that was unexpected. So we had some things that went on during that time. The budget to actual comparison.
Hey, Daryl, before
yes,
you move
I'm sorry,
on
Lee.
past those,
yes.
Could you clarify a little more of what the foundation has transferred over and what they have? I mean, I know there's been approval or action by the foundation, but it all hasn't been delivered yet.
It actually has been delivered. This is a budget that was built for as of May 31. So that's the date issue. At that time, we were still not sure exactly how much would come over. And so I only estimated in my budget adjustment in the month of May, 1.2, but the foundation has delivered 2.6 million to the university, okay, in additional funding, which is wonderful. I mean, and I can't say enough to the foundation board and their support of the university.
As well as foundation has pledged commitment to the upcoming fiscal year.
For the upcoming fiscal year, yes, they have. The budget to actual comparison, these are all funds combined, and it will show you where we're at. I would like to point out to you that student tuition and fees are above what I projected. You say, how can you have that? Well, we revised downward last fall to take care of some things. And then we had COVID hit and we really didn't adjust. But quite honestly, the marketing communication team, Sarah Cravens and her team, there was a lot of reaching out to students and things as we went to an online environment for the summer, and our summer revenue is up from what we anticipated it being. So that's a good sign for us. Of course, you see the $704,000 in housing loss because of the COVID-19 and the early exit and the credits that the students will be utilizing in the fall semester and our food service numbers. Additionally, operating expenses, you can see we're at 87% and 84% on what we had budgeted at that time for salary and fringe benefits. That's a good sign. That means we'll have salary savings as we finish up the year from what we originally budgeted. And that's due to some of the changes, reduction in force, some of the reorganizations, some of the things that we've had to do. And quite honestly, because of the COVID, we've had to do some layoffs. And while that's been very painful for us, it has been a positive impact financially for the university. Non-operating revenues, you can see this is on the revised budget. So we will receive and have received now a whopping $193,000 from the state of Missouri for the month of June in state appropriations. Okay. So you see where we stand right now. We're at 5.1. We were projecting 2.4. You say, where are you going to spend all those funds? Well, there's a lot of adjustments here and things that will happen that we'll take care of. Okay. I'd like to point this one out to the board. This is our statement of cash position as of the end of May. And this is prior to the receipt of the 2.6 that Governor Tiemann referenced to the foundation. What I'd like for you to notice is that in 2018, we had $13 million at the end of May per the board books. Last year at the end of May, we had $10 million. Currently, at the end of May for this past year, for the current year, excuse me, we have 11.8. You say, what does that mean? What it means to me is what we're doing, as painful as it has been, is working because the cash balance is increasing. Even during these times, our cash balance has increased. And so that's a sign.
Daryl, let's talk about that just a little bit more, because there's been some misunderstandings, maybe misconception. Certain financial data for us lay people, the accounting terms may get beyond us, but what you're talking about here, our cash position, that is unrestricted funds basically in our checking account.
That's correct.
At the university to pay our bills. And those are snapshots in time from the same date from years or the last 3 years.
That's correct.
And showing that even through these just extraordinary times, plans you have put into place and have actually shown an improvement in our position of cash we actually have. It's not a reserve per se.
No, it is not.
But it is the money that we have in our account to pay our bills, whether that's tuition or utility bills or that's anything like that, correct?
Salaries and so forth.
Okay.
That is correct. That is correct. Okay. Other questions, concerns on this? Tuition and fee update. We're moving now from the current year into next year. As you'll recall at the last board meeting, I mentioned as we talked about tuition and fee, and the board approved a tuition and fee schedule. And I told you that we would have additional tuition and fees that we would need to discuss at the upcoming meeting, because there are a lot of miscellaneous fees and things like that were not addressed, that the board had not previously seen in years past. And what we're trying to do is get board approval on all of our tuition and fee rates across campus. So as we run through these slides quickly, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding them. I'll point out there were a couple of errors. One that Governor Ebersole called me out on at the last meeting, and that he found. But there were a couple of more as we got into programming these. The tuition proposal, of course, it's already been approved. There are changes on that. The mandatory fee proposal, there are no changes on those. As we move into the program fee proposal, I completely left off the health professionals program fee. And that's at the very bottom. You'll notice it highlighted in red there. And we're proposing $45. That is the combining of the programs into one department now. And the previous charges were $47.55 or $40.55, depending on where you were in some things. So we're proposing that we'll move that to a $45 number. Secondly, the HIF virtual lab fee was mistakenly put on the last fee schedule at $100, and it's only $50. So I wanted to take care of that. And the PTA lab fee, we are requesting a $10 increase for that. Okay. Additionally, we had a materials and technology fee that was incorrectly stated in the prior one. We've got that corrected there. The art materials fee here, there was a $25 fee that I failed to include when I brought it across. So this is some cleanup items on our side. No changes on the housing fees, the board plans. And then here are the miscellaneous fees that were proposed and bringing to you for approval today. The graduation fee, you can see no changes in any of these as we go through. These are just application orientation, pretty standard, but they are the miscellaneous fees across campus that we charge. I want to point out to you the parking permit and parking permit for student employees, and a parking permit replacement, and a restricted parking. We are changing up our parking policies on campus. We've been in discussion about this for some time. What we're going to try to do, and what we are going to do, is open up our parking as all general parking. Okay, So as it stands now, if you are an employee or a faculty member, you basically have a particular parking spot. But we believe as students are our customers, they should be as parking slots should be as available to them as our customers as they are to the employees. So I'll say it like that. So therefore, all parking will open up, okay? And so what we're proposing is $25 for a student, $25 for employees. If you lose your permit, we'll charge you $10 to get it, right? And then we'll have some restricted number of parking places. One of the questions that came out of a town hall meeting on campus yesterday was, is administration going to have to pay for their parking spot? And the answer to the question is yes. And President Wilson is doing cartwheels about it. He can't wait, right? To pay for your parking spot.
I'm looking forward to paying my $200.
Okay. So, but we are doing this, okay? I would point out, in case you hear something, there is a long-standing policy on this university campus that students get a permit for nothing, okay? And it has been explained to students that that is part of the facility access fee, but it is not part of the facility access fee. The facility access fee is to repair the parking lots, not give parking permits. Okay, so I just want to point that out. Okay.
Daryl,
Yes.
is that a charge per semester or per the year?
Annual, it's an annual charge.
Okay.
It's an annual charge. I did some research. Our neighbors to the north currently charge $90 for the fall, $70 for the spring, and $50 for the summer. A campus in Warrensburg currently charges $17 per month. So I think we've got a deal going on our parking fee. Okay. Any other questions on the fees?
No, that's a very nominal fee.
Okay. Now I'd like to talk about the 2021 budget. You should have received a budget in your packet, a rather large thing. We have, and I'm supplying you today with last year's original budget just for comparative purposes and because the numbers are on some of the slides. So I wanted you to have that in your possession. So the original FY20 budget as presented, as you know, we came in, revised it in September to what we believe is a more realistic budget number. And then the proposed budget. The comparison, the change that you see in the far right-hand corner is the change from one year to the next on the budget. Okay, and I'm comparing that not to the original, but to the revised budget. Okay, so that's the comparison numbers there. So for the educational and general undesignated funds, and what you'll find in your budget packet, you should find an educational and general undesignated fund. There should be an educational and general designated fund. There should be an auxiliary operating funds account. There should be a restricted funds account and a plant fund. So there should be 5 different fund types inside your budget. Okay. The first one is the E&G undesignated funds, and you see the change. Secondly, as you look at this, you'll see on educational and undesignated here, what we're seeing is the change in our expenses primarily. If we back up one, we'll see we're down in revenue on our general operating here of $332,000. But if you look, we're $6 million down in our expenses for the coming year.
Daryl, do you have a copy of the book of our board books with that? If you could tell us what page that is. My numbers aren't matching up.
Yeah, that is not in the book per se. I'm sorry.
There we go.
The overall numbers are in there, I believe.
Right, I saw the extrapolation of that is on there, but I wasn't
Yeah,
seeing your slide as a,
Yeah, the slides are not.
okay.
I'm sorry about that. I'll give you mine. I'd be happy to.
I can read the screen.
So, and I'll push these out to everyone, okay? But the salaries and compensation, $3.9 million, 1.3 in fringe benefits. This is just on the operating account of the university, educational in general. Supplies are up slightly. We've trimmed travel by $492,000. That's based on a lot of it deals with the COVID situation that we're in. And our scholarships, we're reflecting almost $500,000 down. That's a change in our, that is a change in our scholarship policy with the Griffin Edge being in that Griffin Guaranteed. Moving on. Okay. And then we see our non-operating. I want to point out to the board and make them aware that at this time, state appropriations, you can see I'm reflecting $3.8 million down in state appropriations. At this time, the state forecast is only a 10% reduction, okay? We have taken a conservative approach to our budget and budgeted an additional 10% down because as we saw this year, those last minute withholds are hurtful. And we're afraid that there may be another projection around the first of the year after the election. And we want to be prepared for that with our current budget. So it's 3.8 there, which brings us down to an overall change there, an increase in our position, still upwards on this particular fund of almost $1 million. Okay. As we look at our designated funds, what you'll find on designated funds, these are specified fees, generally speaking, that students pay to support things like labs, programs, some program fees, things like that. This is, as you see this, we see the operating expenses and whatnot. And we see, even on this one, we see $500,000, and another 200 in fringe benefits, reductions on those two lines. And so overall decrease of 780 designated funds. And we are expecting on this a gain of 87,690. And that's a $2 million shift from our revised budget last year. The next one is auxiliary funds. This will include things such as athletics, housing, food service, bookstore, those types of items. And here's the budgets for them. You'll see a decline in, once again, salaries and fringe benefits, supplies and services, travel, all of those things. A lot of that is attributable to Dr. Looney and the athletic teams not being able to travel as they should for the fall semester. So we've accounted for some of that. Additionally, on the supplies and services, because of our decline in enrollment, that we're anticipating, this budget is built upon 12.5% decline in enrollment. So our state appropriations are none for this. So you'll see that we are losing in our auxiliary operations at this time. I'd like to point out, if you can see the $3.9 million, that's debt service that deals with some bond payments on various things, on the housing issues, Spratt Stadium, things like that, that we're dealing with. Okay. So that's almost a $480,000 increase in that area. Restricted funds, these are federal, state, and local or non-governmental type grant incomes to the university. And this will balance out their salaries, there's benefits, there's things like that. But the bottom line is, as you'll see, that's always be a balanced budget. On a restricted fund, you can't spend what you don't have. So there we are. Our plant funds, we can see there's 10,000 in for supplies as a placeholder. We have our interest on our capital debt, our capital payments. I have budgeted 300,000 for capital because we're going to be looking at a couple of more HVAC units. We've got a chiller, one that is for this building that currently we use a sprinkler on to try to keep it cool. Cooling the chiller. That's correct. To try to keep it operational. Okay.
Is that the only chiller we're looking at needed to be replaced? There might be others.
We have another one that we're having a lot of issues with air handlers and things like that over in Potter Hall that we're also having to deal with. So, okay. So what does all this mean? Here's a recap. I broke it down for you by fund, but now here's the total of all funds. We're $688,000 short on tuition and fees from what our revised budget was last fall. That's taking into account, as I said, 12.5% decline in enrollments. That's what we're projecting at. That's very much more favorable than the 20% that we had discussed at one time. It also takes into account the increase in tuition fees for the upcoming year. State grants and contracts is down tremendously. Almost half of that is because of a MOEX sales grant that we received last year. So that's where those numbers are coming from.
Hey, Daryl.
Yes. Yes.
So what did you project for student enrollment estimated decrease?
12.5% down.
Okay.
From our fall numbers last year. Okay. And then the housing number is 1.5 down. That's still based on the 12.5% down. The food service numbers are down, of course, on down the line. Okay.
Does the food service number reflect obviously like the 12.5 students that are missing, but also like the credits to next semester as well?
Yes. The credits that were issued for the fall semester, yes. We built that in as well. Okay, very good question. If you look at our operating expenses across the campus, you will see $5.7 million has been trimmed from salaries and compensation, and $1.8 million in fringe benefits, and this is strictly from a budget standpoint. On that, the travel number collectively $692,000. Scholarships down 176. Okay, once we factor in everything, including all the grants and whatnot. Yes.
Question on the utilities.
Yes.
How come they're up when we don't have people in the dorms?
Well, we're still cooling them, not at the level that we would be cooling them if there were people in there. And we do have some that are operational and have been operational the whole time, but that's part of the problem. The other thing that we face continually on our utility bill is the fact of our antiquated systems, controls, and things like that, that we have some flexibility where we can raise water points, cooling points, and heating points and things like that. But it really, an old system, just like, your home, an old system uses more electricity or gas or whatever. That's the issue.
Old systems are not as efficient as they could be.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay. Moving on. And let me just back one up. Collectively, this is the number I want you to focus on. Collectively, at this point in time, given everything that we've done, we're still anticipating with a 20% cut in our state appropriation, we are anticipating $3.9 million deficit for the coming year. You say, what are you going to do? Two things. One, hope that the state doesn't cut the other 10%, which would restore it. And I might point out, if the state did not cut our funds, we'd have a balanced budget. But that's not the reality of things. Secondly, and Governor Teeman mentioned this earlier, the foundation has pledged support that will more than cover this deficit. So they have pledged, and not a particular number necessarily, but the number we went to them and visited with them, President Wilson and I, was a number around 7 to 7.5 million. And they have been able to find those funds, but it's a one-time situation, okay? So with giving us 2.6, okay, we've got 4 here. We still anticipate some savings, and we'll continue to monitor things and hopefully have some additional savings to this.
And part of the plan also is extending our runway to implement plans that we are putting in place that just need some time for that to increase enrollment, realign scholarships to students differently, so it's not quite the cost hit to the university, things that we just need a little more time to make that number go down. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the plan is, beyond any shadow of a doubt, to present a balanced budget next year. There's no way around it. But we have made plans, and this board has taken action that will lead to savings for next year that are not reflected. Changes in personnel come to mind with some of our faculty that will be on terminal contracts for the current year, upcoming year, and those numbers will not be in there next year. So those are savings, those are plans, those are things that we're doing, okay? Just to show you a comparison, just a few quick graphs on the 688,000 on tuition and fees. Our operating revenues, you see where we're stacking up. We're down in many of these categories from 20 to what we're projecting for 21. Our auxiliary revenues, as we mentioned, the only bright spot for additional revenues would be athletics, and that's assuming that Josh continues to beat the band and do that. Okay. I would also point out, Josh and I have had this discussion numerous times. Some of the change on that deals with us really giving athletics the money that they're showing and changing our accounting structures to reflect what's truly happening on the campus.
And Daryl, some of the, comments that some are questions I'm putting out there, some for clarification, sure. Because obviously in our environment, there's a lot of misinformation out there. The misinformation breaks my heart that by certain groups, the deliberate wrong information because they promote some personal agenda rather than the overall health and viability of our university goes beyond heartbreaking and is infuriating with that. So I think we need some clarity on that. Like as to athletics, at a non-Division I Power 5 university, which is where we fit into, athletics plays a variety of roles, one of which is actually a main one is student recruitment.
Yes.
Correct? We have a lot of students on this campus that are student athletes that would not be on our campus if we did not have that particular sport. Correct?
That is correct.
And we're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 new or more athletes in this fall to play a new sport that we have implemented at very little cost to the university to bring in these new students, correct?
That's correct.
So athletics is a student recruitment and an actual financial enhancement besides quality of life, college experience for all the students to go to. our athletes, we would love to have all of them on full ride scholarships, but that's rarely the case, correct?
That is correct. Very few athletes have full scholarship.
In fact, I mean, most of our athletes are in the hundreds of dollars of scholarships
Yes.
rather than the thousands, and are doing it because they love the sport,
Yes.
part of the college experience, and specifically why they chose this university to come to, enhance our bottom line as well as enhance our experience here, correct?
That is correct. We have a lot of students that get $500, not a lot of money. And not only, I would just add, Governor Teeman, to your comments, not only that on athletics, but it's not only the athlete that comes. Oftentimes it's a good friend that decides to come. It's a girlfriend, it's a boyfriend, it's a significant other. It's something that comes with them that also enhances our scholarship. And I have been, and this is a personal comment, I have been on campuses where there was no football, for instance. Okay, Division II campus, Division I campus with no football. There's something about the vibrancy of a campus with football on it and on fall day. There's just something about it, and there's no mistaking it, and it's a college experience that students often remember. Even if they could care less about football, it's the experience, it's the ancillary things going on around it. And so it's great. And I appreciate your comments and seeking clarity.
That makes up a substantial portion of our on-campus
Absolutely.
Students filling those dorms that when they're full and at the capacity that they were pre-COVID-19,
that's correct,
is a revenue generator for this university.
It is. It is not only that, but currently we are slowly bringing athletes back. And it is athletes that are bringing back because our normal students do not need to be here at this point in time, but our athletes are here to work out and do additional things. And so we're generating revenue for the university from our athletes as we stand today. And we'll have round number 2, July 3rd, I believe, 6th, will be the next round. Yes.
I was just going to say, another thing is your athletes, it's probably the highest retention rate of your students, isn't it? Because they're in for the long haul, usually for sure 4 years, but a lot of them, it takes 4.5 to 5 when they're having to do so much with their sport.
Our athletes have great retention rates here. Not only that, but they have great GPAs on their campus. And I've been, as I mentioned, on some other campuses, and I would just say that our coaches and all our athletic staff do a tremendous job with our student athletes.
Right. That's actually in our board book if anybody wants to look it up. It's streaming the GPA of our athletes.
I hate to brag on Josh too much. He brags on himself without all of us helping. Okay.
Right. And all of the intangibles, absolutely. I mean,
you are exactly right.
Owns a business here. We see all that, but strictly
That's
from
right.
from talking about from our financial standpoint, regardless of all the exponential great things that happen
That's
with our
right.
student athletes,
Just
from a financial standpoint, it is a benefit to this university.
It is a benefit to this university.
If we were started cutting the programs that we have right now, we are doing other cuts because our student enrollment's going to go down.
We are. Yes, we are. We would, if we begin, when you begin to cut athletics, what you do is not only do you lose the students, but then you begin to lose staff and faculty that teach those students because they're not needed because your head counts are going down. So it all plays together. Absolutely. Okay. Other questions? Comments?
Daryl, I do have a question. So I know you don't have a looking glass or anything. At what point, in what year we'll be turning this around, this decrease in net position? 21, 22? 21, 22, maybe?
Yes, next year.
Okay.
Next year. We have no choice but to turn it around.
Exactly.
We have no choice.
Daryl,
we're almost to the 1st of July.
Yes.
We got a fall semester coming up. You were talking about what the summer did as far as students, and it was better than we had looked at. Are we at a position to get any sense of what the fall numbers are going to look like?
Yeah, and that's what I based the budget on.
Okay.
Is that 12.5% down?
Yeah, and
President Wilson, I think, is going to address it more in the.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
general
can share a
comments.
little bit right now. So as Daryl mentioned, we're going to talk about that in open session.
Okay.
So our summer semester enrollment numbers are down about 5% over the same time last year. Now, as strange as that may sound, that's actually encouraging given COVID-19, given the disharmony that we have witnessed, some of the difficult decisions that we've had to make. With that, because last fall, or I guess last August, when we put our fall 2019 class in the seats, it was down 5% over the previous year. So the fact that we're 5% down in summer and we were 5% down last fall, really it has been stable throughout the course of this last year. So, we're very appreciative of the campus community for coming together during very difficult times,
Right.
and to have spring and summer be consistent with where we started in the fall. So that has been very encouraging. I would say about 6 weeks ago, we were looking at returning student enrollments. Those were running about 16% down. They're running about 8% down right now. Daryl can attest to this. The housing, the returning student contracts are up. Maybe that's by virtue of the fact that we had to stop spring semester short. Folks have credits. Now they can use those credit balances for tuition or housing, but our returning student applications actually, I think, are up in comparison to where they were last year for housing. So, as we look at this, if we can have our returning students be, down, that's still a significant hit. But in the world of COVID, what I am hearing from others around the state is their enrollments are off, 10 to 20% for the fall. And so, our projection of 12.5% probably is on the better end of what we're hearing. The real concern is the students that are coming out of high school. That has been down significantly. We don't have a great tracking mechanism beyond housing applications. Those are down about 16% for new incoming students. That's a concern. Our applications and admissions are down by about 16%. That's pretty consistent. The other marker is how many students have signed up for orientation. That is off considerably, much more than 16%. So that's a concern. I think there's just so much uncertainty that's swirling around right now that's the group that we need to be concerned about. So, if you think about new incoming freshmen being down, let's say 16%, you've got continuing students being down around 8%. That's why we kind of split that difference, even though returning students are more number than freshman students. So we're being a little conservative there to come up with that 12.5% number.
That's correct. I would also point out, and you've heard us mention this before as we were projecting and looking at numbers, our downturn in our freshman class last year, as President Wilson says, it's always the gift that keeps giving, because that even if you retain them, it's never to the level oftentimes that it would have been normally. So
our freshman class last year was off by 10%.
Was 10% down. So we had to factor that in as well. So we inherited that. Yes.
I don't know, it might be for you or for President Wilson. You said summer enrollment's down about 5% from last year.
Yes.
Is there a margin in which it varies historically every summer, or is it pretty consistent?
Well, I mean, the margin, so this is kind of where we get into complexities. And this is part of the discussion that's even out there in the community where, people are like, well, the enrollment at Missouri Western really has not dropped that significantly. It has. Even if you look at overall head count.
Right.
In terms of the financial impact for the university, what really matters is our full-time undergraduate student population, because they're going to be paying the full-time tuition rate, right? We have high school students that are included in our overall numbers. Those high school students probably pay on average between $200 to $250 per semester, where a full-time undergraduate student probably pays about $5,000 per semester, right? So it's about tenfold. And then you have scholarshiping levels that you have to look at. So it's really complex. When we talk about head count, we have to be very careful. And I've tried to change the narrative here in the last year, because every student has a different
Dollar amount
that's associated with them. And I hate to talk about students in terms of dollar amount, right? But as we're talking about finances, that's the reality. So oftentimes what we'll look at credit hours as opposed to head count. Right. So that's a big marker. And I think our credit hours, and I'm going to turn to the provost here. I mean, do you know our credit hours are off by 5% for the summer?
For the summer, it's fairly consistent.
Pretty consistent.
It might be a little more like 6%.
Okay. In terms of being down, we don't have high school students that are coming. And so, the value of those credits is actually higher during the summer. I mean, the goal is you want to be flat, right? You don't want to be dropping. In fact, you want to be going the other way. But if you look back over the last 10 years, I mean, we have been trending down, right? When you lose 977 full-time undergraduate students, that's going to have a major impact, because you're in the 20% range. But if you were to spread, that 22, 23% over 10 years and average it out, you would be down about 2.3%. So we're really off of where we are. It's just, if you go back to fall, we've been consistent this year. We took that big hit in August of 2019, but we have been consistent through the course of this year. But now we're looking at another drop because of fewer freshman student, maybe fewer folks coming back. They've lost their jobs. They don't have money. They've changed course, those type of things as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay.
Man,
Governor,
let's talk about the freshmen for the fall.
Sure.
By the time that they're looking at that, that's when the pandemic, we all faced it. Are you seeing that as part of a driver, why that goes that way?
In part, yes. One of the drivers that we're seeing here is we took a different approach to student recruitment in the traditional side. Instead of person to person, doing a lot of travel, we hired about a little more than a year ago. We'd had them on for 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years now. We renewed a contract of an outside operation that services a lot of universities. And so we're kind of outsourcing the admissions. Personally, I think that that's one of the reasons why we're down so much. Another reason, so this is pre-COVID.
Right.
Another reason why we're down so much is there are fewer students in our area high schools. From a demographic standpoint, as I personally went around and visited high schools, at every high school, they were telling me how much smaller their classes were now than they were 3 years ago, than they were 5 years ago. So that's a big part of it. There's more competition from out of state. The COVID-19 factor that you're asking about, unfortunately, because we don't have a seat deposit, it's very difficult to tell.
Right.
I know just from what I've heard from our recruiters who have been busy on the phone, they've been emailing, they've been texting students, that we do have students who are looking to come here that have said, due to the uncertainty, I'm just going to take a gap year, or I'm going to start late. I think there's some financial things that have come into play as well. And so, that COVID-19 thing is real. And I think that's what other universities are seeing as well. And I think, by and large, some of the students are waiting to see whether we're actually able to have live in-person classes in the fall. I mean, we're all intent on that. But we'll see. So, we're kind of getting hit from all different angles with respect to our freshman class. Competitiveness, you've got other universities, if they're down by 20%, the solution is oftentimes to grant extra scholarships Problem is those scholarships typically are discounts, right? They're not funded. And so, as you have other universities dishing those out, the question then becomes, what do we do in that respect?
Okay. Other questions?
I think I could just anecdotal respond to that because I have a 18-year-old little brother from Liberty, and himself and his peers are more confused about where they should go to college than ever before because of COVID-19.
Exactly.
And I didn't get to take the ACT this summer, or various different things that are delayed. And it's already hard when you're 18 trying to figure out where you want to just go to school, and then this is happening. So
He should come where his sister is.
what?
He should come. He should
Yeah,
come
he
see.
should. He's thinking about it.
He should come see his sister serve on the board.
You know what he said? He wished Missouri Western had a rugby team. So put that out there.
Well, it's interesting because we're talking about athletics. I mean, that's why we added lacrosse, right?
Yeah.
Is to do that. And I've had people reach out and say we should add women's wrestling. I've heard bowling. I've heard swimming. I've heard diving. And you do have universities at the Division II, Division III level that to attract students, they have increased athletics. You don't pay the scholarships. And so there are some universities that offer 40 different athletic programs. So Josh, maybe you should start getting those proposals up and ready. And
Men's rugby.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, one other thing that I would add about the summer thing, I also think moving everything to online, I think academic deans led by our provost and some of our department chairs and things, the restructuring of some of our class offerings also enhanced our enrollment somewhat for the summer. And we also took a hit on the academic side because we have a lot of applied learning things that we do in the summertime that we were unable to perform this summer. So that impacted it as well. So the comparison here, I just want to show you this, the 5.7, just quickly to do this, 1.8 there, 6.9. All of this information is detailed in your book by the fund that I've done, the actual budget book itself. There's a listing in there. You'll see all the salary listings and things like that. Someone said, well, I've never seen anything like that. Quite honestly, President Wilson and I were visiting about that, and we were kind of astonished that was not part of a budget book. Because on all of our campuses. So here we go. The comparison non-operating, you see our interest there on our debt. We talked about that earlier, the slippage in state appropriation. Here's the final budget number, just everything combined, rolled up into one at 3,965. Any additional questions, comments? I'm sorry, we had a lot of ground to cover today. I talked slow, but I moved as fast as I could. Okay. But
We appreciate all the work that you and the people who help you put this together. I know you were working night and day and night and day and night and day to get it to us, and it's very detailed and very appreciative.
Okay, I would like to address a couple of things before we close this up, and I turn it back over to you, Governor Smith, and that would be on the parking fee. I mentioned that about it being a student fee earlier. That is not a mandatory fee, okay? So if you don't register a vehicle on this campus, you don't have to pay that fee, okay? If you ride the bus or someone drops you off or something like that, it's not a fee you would have to pay. So I just want to be clear about that. Same thing with an employee or whatever. And I also think I failed to mention when I was doing that, it's a safety issue. We need to know who's on our campus in this day and time. And registering vehicles and knowing who is here provides our police department information that we need, okay?
What are you going to charge a board of governors to park?
$500.
Okay. I'll write you a check.
We may give you a special permit, okay? Because you're making so much for serving.
There you go.
I would like to, if I might have just a moment of liberty, to introduce Kathy Gammon. She is the university's budget director. And Kathy and others in our office worked countless hours back last fall, combining the things that gave us a starting place to build the budget that we presented today. And so I appreciate all her hard work, and I just ask that you acknowledge her and the others in my office that worked with me, as you did, Debbie. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Quiet.
Well, and let me just, take a moment if I can and express appreciation to Daryl and Kathy and Jake and other folks. Seems like every time over the last, month I've walked into Daryl's office, he's got like a team of 3 or 4 that are working away. And, as we've talked about before, putting together a budget has been a completely different process here at the university. And, as we talk about, the past versus the current or the future, it's not our jobs or our intent to criticize, but rather it's to make it even more transparent, to provide, additional information, to pull it so that, you understand everybody, what's going on. I mean, as I was going through the budget book, I knew that we cut hay and we sold it, but I didn't realize that was an income stream and how much we actually got from that until I looked at the new budget. And, when I first started to look at the budget, I was very concerned, very discouraged, because I'm sure Daryl was as well. I kept on asking him all of these pointed questions about the budget and that about the budget, because it wasn't apparent, in the budget book. And so we've got a budget book that, if you compare sizes, and I see we have the 2019 and 20 budget, it's probably 10 times the size in terms of that. But we wanted to make sure that the board had, comprehensive information, that the campus community, has all of the information. What you will see, what you have seen is, through some very difficult measures this year, we have actually stabilized the university. I mean, it's unfortunate with COVID-19 that continues to give us trouble. As you heard, but for COVID-19, we would be ending the budget year on an uptick over where we had projected. In fact, it probably would have been a balanced budget, even though we came and restated it for you. This year, the budget that's in front of you, the thick budget that's there, but for the state cuts, we would be coming in with a balanced budget. That really is, for an institution this size, nothing short of a miracle. So not only Daryl and his team, but, I want to thank Sarah Cravens for all of her work, for Doug and all that he has done. Josh Looney, we've heard his name a couple of times, as we have put pressure on Josh to maximize the revenue and also cut expenses. I know how difficult that is, but I appreciate that. And then Jomel, her efforts with her team, the cabinet, and then others, the deans and everybody else, the chairs, the campus community, as we look at expenses, it's really difficult for everybody, right? But at the same time, we are making progress. There is a strategic plan that's going forward. As I've told folks, the locomotive to take us into the future is built. You have the tracks that are set, and there's a pathway forward. We just need to make sure that we're all supporting that train and moving that train forward, as opposed to trying to keep it in the station and pushing it backwards. So thank you to everybody in the team, and thank you to the board for the support. And as you know, any questions that you have, any information that you need, we will show you anything and everything. And so whatever we can do. So those are my words.
Good words. Thank you so much. So nothing else for finance committee meeting. So what time is it?
It is 1:06.
Oh, well, you'll get a nice little break, everyone.